David Satderfield, who was the so-called humanitarian coordinator under Biden, he's even acknowledged now multiple times that these Israeli claims that Hamas is diverting aid from UNRWA and the World Food Program, and that's why we have to set up this new group that we control. He's acknowledged that there's no evidence for that whatsoever. He said that Israel never presented any evidence that Hamas was diverting aid, and so even he debunked it. And he was a part of an administration that was that fueled the genocide and kicked off this campaign to undermine UNRWA, with Tony Blinken suspending aid to UNRWA after Israel accused a handful of its members of taking part in October 7th, which turned out to be yet another deception. So even a member of a genocide-enabling administration, David Satterfield, acknowledged that these Israeli claims to justify the establishment of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation were lies, just like everything else Israel says.
Complete lies. And so what's the alternative to having Hamas, but not Hamas? It's really like professional, municipal, trained police forces escort these convoys. The alternative is the forces that Hamas had always tried to keep at bay in the Gaza Strip, which I've always been saying for years, and because I'd been to Gaza and I understood some of the dynamics on the ground, that these forces were being instrumentalized by the Mossad and by the Israeli military. They are the Salafist ISIS-aligned forces that are connected to ISIS elements in the North Sinai in Egypt, who are actually fighting a low-level insurgency against the Egyptian military. And Netanyahu has finally come out and admitted that they are using ISIS-connected gangs, which looted aid for months and months, to now protect the aid. They used them to loot the aid when Hamas was trying to provide protection in order to prevent the aid from reaching people. After establishing some level of famine and starvation, now they're using them to supposedly protect the aid. This is our colleague Wyatt Reed. Netanyahu effectively confirms Israel's running guns to the quote-unquote lawless criminals in Gaza, who a former defense minister calls Salafi jihadists who began identifying with ISIS. First, they propped up Hamas to prevent a secular government. Now they're propping up ISIS to prevent Hamas. And then here's a Haaretz piece: Israel arming ISIS-affiliated militia in Gaza. Ex-defense chief claims Netanyahu, we're fighting in various ways. That former defense chief is Avigdor Lieberman, who also lifted the mask on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation last week and revealed that it was actually sponsored by the Mossad and wasn't even American, although the Americans are fronting for it. And who is that ISIS leader? I mean, this is all out there in the Israeli press. It's in the Palestinian press. It's all out there in the open. It's a guy named Yasser Abu Shabab. Security cabinet, this is Times of Israel, wasn't informed of plan to start arming Abu Shabab group, which was created in Rafah last year and has its roots in looting aid trucks. Here's the Abu Shabab gang. And, they post this video. Hamas has been, the Al-Qassam brigades have been trying to fight them, and Israel attacks the Al-Qassam brigades anytime they try to stop these criminal bandits. And doesn't it sound familiar, Aaron? It reminds me of the Syria dirty war and what Israel was doing in the Golan.
Yeah, or whenever, for example, ISIS would advance in Syria, there are some really famous incidents, like when they advanced on Palmyra, and the U.S. just turned the other way. They stopped the bombings that they had been doing against ISIS because they used ISIS, as John Kerry admitted, as leverage to force out Assad. So it's the same playbook.
Yeah, I remember when Jen Psaki and John Kirby were spokespeople for the State Department back in the day, under Obama, and they were like the biggest jokes. And John Kirby was asked by a reporter, "Do you support Russia retaking Palmyra from ISIS?" And he refused to answer the question. Yeah. That, to me, that was back in 2015 or 2016. It was like, that's it. That's the U.S. policy.
They were ISIS agnostic.
Well, Trump is behind this policy. I mentioned earlier, Mike Huckabee introduced, this is the Christian Zionist U.S.-Israeli reciprocal ambassador in Jerusalem, Mike Huckabee, in March, I believe, endorsed the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation as what the Trump administration was putting into place to replace the United Nations. Dorothy Shea at the UN, Trump's UN representative, also openly endorsed it. And now they've got Johnny Moore there, who's like a Trump crony. So they're putting their stamp of approval all over possibly one of the most scandalous humanitarian schemes of our lifetime.
Absolutely.
Probably more scandalous than what took place in Haiti after the earthquake.
Or the fake vaccination campaigns in Pakistan that helped the U.S. or that were aimed at helping the U.S. find bin Laden.
Yeah.
Which ultimately, I think, ended up I don't remember the details, but certainly this is way worse than anything I can remember. I mean, basically destroying the existing aid mechanism in a besieged death camp for 2 million people. So taking out UNRWA and the World Food Program and all the other aid groups, replacing it with a fake group and using it to push people for ethnic cleansing and massacres in the process, all while arming gangs that loot the actual trickle of aid getting in. I can't think of anything more cynical that I've ever heard about.
And body count continues to pile up. I think the Hindra Job Foundation has it right. I don't have the post in front of me, but it's time to just take names of who's involved. And, you know, those of you who are in the military community who are watching this, you are a veteran, take names of those who are participating in this mercenary operation. They're hiring hundreds of former special operations soldiers who are now like mostly in their 40s to do static checkpoint protection and participate in this Holocaust. And they're all wearing masks. They're afraid to reveal their identity. They need to be exposed. The people involved at the top need to be exposed. They are helping privatize a Holocaust. It's one of the biggest scandals of our time. And the mainstream media is reporting on this. Like, they are covering it. And they're doing, actually, some of them are attempting to do real reporting here, but they're not doing enough. I mean, it shouldn't have been up to us to highlight the fact that the Mossad and the Israeli Defense Ministry, if you can even call it that, are the real funders of this operation. They should be digging a lot deeper.